Now you're very welcome back. So very happy to say Mr. Brian Kerr has joined us in studio to reflect on week 1 of the World Cup. Feels like we're about week 8 into it, but it's only been a week.
Yeah, it's been a lot on, hasn't it, Joe?
Have you seen any daylight in the last week? How are you enjoying it? It's been eventful on and off the pitch. So how has week 1 treated you?
Well, I have to say, Joe, I was very happy not to be asked to go to Qatar to work there. I've been privileged to be able to go as a fan to a good few World Cups or do a bit of work. Last time I was in Russia for a few games. It was very interesting to see, and I worked on doing co-commentary on 2 previous ones, Brazil, South Africa. I've gone to a fair few as a punter, let's say, in 1966, 1990, 94, 98. So, but I have to say, from the off on this, I never had any great desire. I've been in the UAE a couple of times, not on holidays, for football reasons. We had teams playing there when I was involved in the underage international situation, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the culture. I didn't like the way that it appeared that people were treated. It was the same situation. I don't know how many migrant workers were killed building the massive hotels and skyscrapers in Dubai over the years. We never got figures on those things, and it was never such an issue that the international media honed in on it. But I never felt comfortable around the hotels in the way that the workers appeared to me, that they were almost like slaves in the hotels to the visitors, mostly European visitors. But I was there, as I said, I was there in a coaching capacity. Looking, I didn't like it. I didn't like Iran when I was in Iran a couple of times either. And I'm not putting forward the idea that people shouldn't go and visit these places. I'm just saying I wouldn't have felt particularly that I was going to enjoy going to Qatar for matches, which is what I would have done in the past of World Cups, because they're such joyous occasions. That's why people travel all around the world to meet other people from other countries and sharing their joy and fun and laughter and in their love of sport, and not always just love of football. A lot of people that travel are interested in other sports, but football brings the world together in many ways at the World Cup. But I didn't have that feeling about this one. So I heard you using the word conflicted when you were talking to Jan and Sarah earlier on, and I would have certainly been conflicted had I been put in that situation, but I wasn't. So I was in a situation, in the build-up, that I wasn't particularly doing the analysis of the teams, and someone said to me, who do you think is going to win it, which several people did. I said I'm not really sure yet, so they haven't sorted out the squads because a lot of players injured, and it was a way of kind of backing out of having to look at the teams in detail as we all normally would, and analysing them and saying what's the strengths and weaknesses, who's in the best of shape, who's brilliant in qualification, where's the best balanced teams. I didn't really do that and waited till the matches have started, and now the matches are on, and because I was coming to do this, I said I better watch matches, and then my whole obsession takes over. The matches are on, I feel I should watch them, and then I'm starting to look at them tactically, looking at the nuances of the games, the approach of the teams. But you cannot avoid all the outside stuff that's been going on for teams, for the issue around the wearing of the armband or no wearing of the armband, and FIFA's threats and Infantino's speech at the first match. The pressure on the Iranian team, the non-singing of the anthem, the courage they had to do that, then waiting for the second match after they get battered by England 6-2. How did they approach that? How did they get over? What sort of threats went on in the background? We don't know as yet, whether we'll ever know. And you're waiting to see. And then the second match, they kind of, it was almost like they were miming the national anthem when I watched them. It wasn't fervent, it wasn't passionate, it wasn't as we've seen with almost every team that's there. So all of these kind of side things are going on that you can't ignore them when you're watching the games. The lies about the numbers at the matches, the crowds, you can see it in the stadiums that the stadiums are, there's big gaps in it. As a matter, kind of a little bit of an intriguing one. I decided this morning I'd look how much would it cost me to go to a match next week if I wanted to buy a ticket, and it looked like the minimum price was 300 quid to get into a match, the cheapest ticket. And I'm going, 300 quid is the minimum, so people are paying minimum 300, but they're paying up to 1,500 for euro per ticket for a match. The amount of money people are spending are gone. It's no surprise that the numbers are not travelling from Europe, I suppose, the main. When you look at Argentina last night, it seemed like there was a massive crowd from Argentina and Mexico. It was hard to judge just watching it on TV, but both of them had huge support. Saudi Arabia next door to Qatar, they have huge support there. It's a huge country, big population, easy for them to get there. Morocco looked like massive support as well, not too far away. So those countries have big support, but a lot of other countries don't have big support. And it's the costs, I think. You look at the stuff where people have been getting ripped up off in the accommodation. The accommodation hasn't been built, that's been promised in some cases. And they're being charged 200 quid a night for a skimpy tent that's half built and not built when they arrived, and they're chasing refunds. There's just so many elements of it that don't sit well. The confiscation of people's gear on the way in, jerseys with some message on them, like the message of women, life, freedom in the Iranians case, being confiscated. The fact that the stewards or the security have been so diligent in their work, that takes away the joy of the normal World Cup. And we've had to go through security the World Cups for several years. You've been at them. I'm sure you've been at them, have you?
Yeah, Brazil.
Yeah, and you go through it, and you know, but there's an element of, we know we have to go through this, but there's also an element of respect from that you might have got it slightly wrong by something you have in your bag, and there's a place where they'll store it for you because you can't bring it into the ground when there's a spiky umbrella or whatever it was. But this seems to be kind of just outrageous. The Welsh hats one, where they started to confiscate the hats of the Welsh supporters, and then eventually I heard Noel Mooney, the CEO of the Welsh FA, coming out with a bit of a speech saying, well, FIFA have now allowed us to have told us that our supporters can wear these coloured hats. I mean, how awful, how ridiculous is that? And I know it's a different culture. I know, it's not simple. It's not. There's nothing simple about the whole situation. I mean, the idea of it being there, of the World Cup being in the Middle East, I think that's fair enough. I think for too long it went on. It was Europe, South America, South America, and then it broke out and it went to USA 94, and then we had the South Africa to 2010 to back to South America again. You're going, is it fair that it should be like that? Of course it shouldn't be like that. But if they were going to do it in the way, I mean, it was the amount of skullduggery that went on and the corruption around the decision on Russia 2018 and this one. It's just amazing when you look back into it. But at least if it was going to go there, and I had a look at the map in the last couple of days, what should have been done, if FIFA were really honest and wanted to portray themselves as the great world authority on the game who wanted to spread the game, they should have played it in a partnership like the next one with Mexico, USA and Canada, and they should have done it with some of their closest neighbours, the likes of Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, those ones, maybe Saudi Arabia in it as well. But they could have used any of that little group around there who were all very wealthy, who had all been capable of building the stadiums. Instead of a situation at the moment where, again, you discussed it in the newspaper review earlier on, where they have boxed 8 stadiums into an area, as I understand it, between about the size of from Greystones to Balbriggan. They've box 8, which are going to be useless in the future for the Qatari League. If the population in Qatar is 300,000 locals and maybe 2.2 million immigrant workers, who you wonder will they all stay, how many will be left after it, but they're not all football supporters supporting the Qatari League, so they're never going to need those stadiums for that. So we've seen this before to a lesser degree in other countries, but if they'd spread it around them, a few of them, I think that would have been more acceptable, might have had more of an impact in many ways. There wouldn't have been so much attention on the defects or the deficiencies in the culture, the treatment of the migrant workers, the treatment of the LGBTQ plus community, attitudes towards women, women's rights. If it'd been spread around more, and the other thing about it is, I mean, it's totally immoral, the spending on this. If it's 200 billion or 300 billion, we won't know what the figures are. There's no shortage of billions to spend on the network, on the roads network. In the current world, in the way things are in the world, surely a few of those countries could have got together and held that World Cup, and the money that was saved could have went to alleviating some of the other problems around the world at the moment. What if I'm not just saying the Qataris on their own, but the rest of those rich Middle Eastern states, if they decided, well, we've agreed to do this and we will put the money into developing a water system, a proper water system in Africa to alleviate the awful things, awful famines that are happening in so many places in Africa due to climate change. They could have an impact, an influence of 50 billion for stadiums, for roadwork network, for a metro, for a tournament for a few weeks. I mean, it's totally immoral and disgusting as far as I'm concerned, Joe. But look, but you can't put that aside when you're watching the matches, and I'm saying that from someone that loves the matches and watches the games, and will enjoy the football and loved Richarlison's goals the other night, and was enjoying watching Mbappe and the thrill of Iran coming back from the awfulness of that day and the 6-2 and the battering they got and winning the match against Wales in the dramatic fashion they did. There's joy in that, and the reaction of their supporters, the reaction of their fans, the reaction of the players and the staff. Oh, that's lovely. There's emotion in that, and you have to enjoy that. But still,
there's the conflict.
Absolutely.
On last night's games, so Mbappe at 23 years of age now has 30 goals for France, which is just outrageous. That was his 7th World Cup goal. So only Mbappe and Pele have scored 7 World Cup goals before the age of 25. Messi, for instance, has 8, so Mbappe's already at 7. I saw the word uncontainable used to describe Mbappe by, I think it was Jonathan Northcroft at the game. That's not a bad word. He looks like he has pitched up, looking and feeling absolutely electric. That seemed like a beautiful game last night. 2 teams playing lovely football and thoroughly enjoyable. We'll go on to Mexico, Argentina in a second, which was a contrast. What did you take from Denmark, France?
Well, I thought, I mean, we know Denmark fairly well from our regular matches with them over recent years, and we know how well organised and disciplined side that they are. When I say disciplined, I mean that they are very effective with the players they have. They don't have a lot of players of massive international standing, although there are plenty of players playing at a high level. Christian Eriksen's the one that we see most often, and his story in particular is magnificent story after what happened to him at the Euros, and he comes back in. They're a very good side, but I thought it was very interesting how they contained France for so long in the game. But ultimately, and this is what we've seen in the tournament. If you look at some of the trends, we in advance, I'll come back to France in particular, but if you look before the tournament, we're looking at how will it be for Ronaldo, how will it be for Messi, how will it be for Gareth Bale, will Harry Kane be brilliant for England, how will Modric still go? So there's some out there, the older fellas, and then there's Mbappe coming along, De Bruyne not going so well, and these are the stars and then Neymar is the other one. You're wondering how he influenced the game. And the moments in the game so far, I mean, Ronaldo has pulled out the goal. He makes himself a penalty. Didn't play very well in the match. He's probably still a hindrance. I think he's a bit of a hindrance in their team as he was in Manchester United. Gareth Bale has been poor. Similar. Made a penalty. Ronaldo scores a penalty. Bale scores a penalty. Messi scores a penalty. All the first game. Their contributions other than that in the match were very poor until Messi did. But go back to Mbappe, the young man. I remember a few years ago saying, like, weren't we lucky to be around to see Ronaldo and Messi's brilliance for so long? Not necessarily in the World Cup, or always in the World Cup, but in football that we see so much of on telly at the top level in Champions League. And then you're waiting on who is going to be the one. And certainly Mbappe has lived up to that. With all the stuff that went on this summer, was he going to Real Madrid? And a lot of criticism around him, that the terms of him saying for PSG, that Macron interfered and said you can't leave the country. You know, the president gets involved in getting a player to stay at the team, but the bottom line is he's probably the highest paid player to ever play football, and he's got all that, and then you got to live up to it. You got to produce the goods. He's on 50 goals this year for the calendar year already across the board with PSG and international football. But he's been superb. The match lighting's up, and again, you said you talk about his influence in the game. I can remember you remember games you go to and you see players and you're waiting on them to receive the ball in the match, and when they receive that, there's a little bit of initial hush. Now it's not so much of a hush. There's an excitement in Qatar. It's kind of like there's a lot of people at the matches that probably don't go to a lot of football matches a lot of time, and sometimes they cheer at the wrong times. That's what I noticed. But anyway, when these players receive the ball, Messi to a lesser it isn't so much of that with him at the moment, but certainly that with Mbappe now, and that bit of expectancy. I remember as a kid about George Best and going to see George Best playing, and that expectation, will he do it? What'll he do? And he invariably did it. He'd run with it, he'd dribble, he'd beat fellas, and fellas were swinging and booting at him and throwing the boot and all that, and invariably he did something magical that you left the game going, George Best, I'd love to be able to be like George Best, you know. So Mbappe is that one at the moment. Every time he's got the ball in the two games so far, there's been something that's happened. He's not always picked the right pass or had the perfect finish, but he's been sensational. The two goals, and you look at them last night, the first one is a kind of a lovely little one to Hernandez. The time of the pass back to him, the decision to hit it when he hit it, wasn't brilliant contact, but there was enough on it, little deflection, goes past the goalkeeper. But the second one, the speed of movement to be in there off the bottom, Griezmann, the sharpness, and Christensen wasn't as the right back for Denmark, big lad plays at Leeds. He looked around and he looked like I have him. And we're in this. It's a split. It's a split of a second. It's like in the 100 meters. It's just across the line. How did they sort out who won that race? Wait, we see the photo finish, and it's not one. The difference. It's not one. He's in there and he's kind of bundling it in. He has that agility, and he's way up off the ground. He has that agility and strength of thought and decision making, not to get the wrong part of his body to the ball. So he's been, and he gives them a chance. And the way they're playing, I think I heard lads talking to it with John about it with John Duggan yesterday about the French system. You look at them; they gave Denmark plenty of time on the ball, Joe. The high press thing that's become the vogue in a lot of football and particularly the Premier League football. Majority of teams play the high press. There's a bit less of it now. Liverpool have dropped off a little bit more. City are still very much at it. Manchester City, Spurs don't. They're very much drop off and let the opposition have it, and that comes into the English thing then. But you look at France, they're dropping off and allowing Denmark to be comfortable and have time on the ball and play the ball around, and it was quite easy for them at times to build up play, and that seems to be to accommodate drawing the opposition on, bringing them out in the goal, not getting Giroud to use up his energy, running around the place, chasing after players, keeping him with a bit of energy when he has got to do a bit of work, but also that Mbappe is keeping his energy for those moments in the game. So that's what I'm going about.
Yes.
The individual players changing games, individual brilliance changing games. Messi did it last night for them. Richarlison did it rather than Neymar. Richarlison, who he's been very iffy at Spurs, hasn't played a lot. He's been out injured for a month. Went off crying last match he played for Spurs. Didn't look like he was going to make it. But that was moments of brilliance. Those players, Messi did it. Harry Kane hasn't done it yet. He's played very well in the first match. The controversy around whether he stayed on the pitch for so long after getting a knock in the ankle, plays on, didn't do well in the game, ended up drifting back the pitch. We'll probably talk about that as we go on. But the influence of the special players, De Bruyne, I don't think he's done it in the 2 games. Didn't see any of the game today, but they're beating 2-0. I didn't get the feeling that he was doing particularly well. The other big influences have been the substitutions in the matches. The influence of the manager is a trend, a very important trend, because again we'll probably talk about Silke, what he should have done, what he didn't do. And even the manager today, the Moroccan team puts on 2 subs, scored 2 goals. Carlos Queiroz puts on the subs, they scored the goals that beat Wales. Should Page have made other changes after the goalkeeper Hensey's put off? Should he have made a different change and taken off Bale, even though he's the one, because he can't run around, he's not running around. So the influence of the managers, the influences of those special players, there's a trend. Lots of things. Referees, not a lot of controversy about the referees. Interesting that Michael Oliver didn't get a match until today. That's interesting. Who's one of the best referees without a doubt in the world. But not a lot of controversy. No. Not a lot of controversy around VAR. A few very dodgy, soft penalties, all right, in matches. I've seen a few. Yesterday. Which one was it? Anyway, but I've seen a few soft. But generally, the VAR thing hasn't been too much VAR. Not too much controversy. No controversy around the ball. Remember we used to have all that one about the ball. The ball's causing a problem. It's going too far. It's hopping too high. Yeah. The pitches aren't right. The Venezuelas are too noisy. Right? All them things are. There's not much about that. No. So it's only about the game and the environment.
Yes.
And should it or not should. And I suppose that's a good thing. So look, FIFA can't have any. They can't take any kudos for any of this. But whoever is doing the refereeing side of it, other trends. Just I'd say the Asian teams, the African teams doing better. The African teams, we used to look at the African teams and say, used to always seem to have dodgy goalkeepers. And like that's too big of a gem. But there's not been bad mistakes goalkeeping, defensively, organisation. They haven't seen that. They've been much more solid. Much better organised.
Coaching is standardised across the world.
Across the world, and much more easier. better organised across the world. But no, even though we've had the 7-0 in Costa Rica, they come back gloriously last night to win. Last night 1-0, brilliant. And we've had the 6-2 Iran. They come back from that. But outside of them, there hasn't been. I don't think there's that big divide anymore between the European, South American, African teams that qualify, Asian teams that qualify, Central America to a little bit of Costa Rica. But the Costa Rica have come out with that now well. I mean, they hardly had a shot in either match. They had no shots against Spain. They had one shot today. They scored against Japan and they won.
We'll take a short break. I want to pick up on the England points with you in just a moment. Our football show coverage is brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Brian Kerr staying with us 3 till 4. Any texts or questions, fire them in 53106.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, proud partner and supporter of the Republic of Ireland women's national football team.
This is News Talk. Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, get more of the sports you love on Sports Extra with BT Sport and Premier Sports.
This is News Talk.
You're welcome back. Brian Kerr still with us, reflecting on week 1 of the World Cup. So We're going to have to keep this answer shorter because we started off just touching on last night's matches. We barely even touched on Argentina. There was a point even in the commentary, and it was, let's say, a stop-start first half, to be kind to it. But there was a point in the commentary where Ray Houghton was just reflecting on the Copa America win and the 36 match unbeaten run of Argentina. And he said, he was almost half talking aloud to himself. He just sort of said, I don't really see it. Don't see it in this team.
Yeah, I was the same watching the match. It was hard to believe they'd gone so long without losing the game because there was very little about them. I mean, given the situation, they were poor against Saudi Arabia. Didn't create many chances. No. Messi scored a penalty. And they're under pressure, but they were under ferocious pressure last night, Joe. I mean, they're on the verge of going out of the competition. Obviously, Messi personally is under fierce pressure. But it was hard. Like, you looked at the team, and there isn't pace in the team in the attacking positions. Martinez playing up front wouldn't be particularly fast as a centre forward. He couldn't play it in behind for him. Di Maria on the right side, McAllister. They didn't make a chance really in the first half at all. There was very, very little happening for them, and the midfield was so poor. Rodriguez sitting back between the centre halves, picking the ball. The Paul was never on the ball. The full backs were timid. And they couldn't get the ball to Messi because obviously once the ball was looked like it was going towards Messi, there was a lash of Mexican players closing in on them, just the same as the Saudi Arabians did.
Yeah.
And it was hard to see where the goal was going to come from. But what was good for Argentina was Mexico seemed to decide fairly early on that they were going to be happy to get a point from the match.
Yeah.
And then Argentina were having more of the ball. In fairness, again, the manager made a couple of changes which made the difference. Fernandes come on in the middle of the pitch, 57 minutes instead of Rodriguez, and that really made a difference. Messi gets the goal. We'll say out of nothing. It wasn't an awful lot. It wasn't a huge threat. The pass inside Di Maria and just one touch to set it up and a brilliant finish, and that settled them to a degree. The manager's reaction was to put on another centre back. He put on Romero, changed the system, but they got another goal and it was very comfortable at the end. But it's hard to see them. What's last match is Poland. They'll have a difficult match with Poland. A draw might be enough, but it mightn't be enough depending on the other game. So they've got to go for the win in that game. But I don't see them being a big threat to the main players based on what we're seeing. But the group stages don't always prove to be the guideline for what happens after that. Teams can find form. Teams that have good players and good squads can find form.
Probably especially with the short lead-in time to this World Cup in particular. So looking at the back pages, the English media very confused about the Phil Foden situation. If there's a big talking point around the English camp, as well as Harry Kane's fitness, it's Phil Foden, for instance. So they play Wales on Tuesday, I think. So Wayne Rooney, for instance, that was like the big point of his column today in the Sunday Times, and he was saying, like, Foden's the best technical player we have. Gary Neville's saying he's the best player we have. Rooney was saying for him it would be Foden. If they're going with their current formation, it would 100% be Foden on the left, first name on the team sheet, and let Saka and Sterling decide who plays on the right, either side of Kane. The other point he made, be curious for your thoughts, he was saying he would take out Mount and he would put Bellingham in where Mount is, and he'd put Phillips presumably, or if he's not fit, Henderson alongside Rice. He said Rice needs a defensive partner. And he said that might sound like a very defensive thing I'm saying, but actually with Rice on his own there, without a defensive partner alongside him, if Bellingham's pushing forward, he said England's fullbacks stay deep. So actually, counterintuitively, he said this would allow England to get further up the pitch if we go back to that Rice and Calvin Phillips partnership of the Euros. So he was Mount, out you come, Bellingham, you go further on, and we get someone else in beside Rice and let the fullbacks push on. So that's a bit for Gareth Southgate to think about.
Well, okay. Foden first, and who's saying what, right? Because I think all these people are suddenly able to say all these things. After game 1, 6-2, it was football's coming home and we're brilliant and we are sensational, and all the manager got it bang on, sticking with Harry Maguire, stuck to his guns with Sterling and played him, got it bang on there as well. went for Bellingham in the middle of the field, didn't play Phillips, didn't play Henderson. Manager got it bang on.
True.
He's a hell of a manager. Right? Doesn't go so well because they're playing against, and that's what I mentioned earlier to you about the narrowing gap between the European teams and the others, let's say, European, South American and the others. So we now have USA and Canada being very competitive, as well as the African teams and the Asian teams. And they came up against a USA team, American team, very, very well organised, very confident. Two old boys in the middle defence, Zimmerman and Ryan playing exceptionally well. Robinson, full-back, and Dest getting up and down the line. And suddenly England's full-backs were pinned back a bit, but with they lost out in the middle of the pitch with the energy of Musa, Adams and McKennie around the midfield area. And they never really got on top of it in the game. It was a slower build-up. The Americans were clever. They allowed them stay on the ball sometimes. Sometimes they come in and pressed. They jumped out and pressed on them and threatened them. But England never got a flow. Harry Kane started dropping back further and further in the match. Bellingham wasn't as vibrant as he was in the previous game because they're playing against better players than the Iranian players. They're players who are playing at a better level around Europe. You look at those lads, they're playing in Germany, they're playing at Dortmund, they're playing at Leeds, they're playing across the board at a better level than the American players previously, and they know tactics. They know the English players, some of them are playing in England, they're hard playing. So there's a bit just respect. Pulisic was outstanding, picking up the ball, running at the English defence, everything we got the ball. So where should I go for the next match? So Foden, yes. Foden, surprised the answer he gave. He asked the question, why did you not bring on Foden? He said because he doesn't play in those midfield positions for his club, which means that he's only considering him for one of those wide front players to the side of Harry Kane. And he brought on the two extra players. He brought on Rashford and Grealish. So that means Foden is number 5 behind them, which is a bit...
Can't be right.
No, it doesn't seem... Now, I'd always give the manager the benefit of doubt. I'd always think that the manager knows more than anyone else, and plenty of times I used to be frustrated in my own head about people saying things, media fellas and journalists kind of, saying things, I should have done this and he should have done that. And I used to say, the manager who goes to as many matches as he goes to and he sees every training session and he sees is entitled to make those decisions. But sometimes maybe, Joe, you're in too much of a bubble surrounded by people who think the same as you do and kind of know the answers that you want to hear when you ask them questions.
Agree on everything. Funny, Neville said he was almost wondering, has something happened? He was at that much
because
of a loss.
that's the point I'm trying to say, that did something happen that Foden isn't right, that he's saying I can't. But
and he's not going to tell us obviously publicly.
But I think there'll be changes certainly now. I mean, that was the first time I think since the Euros semi-final and final that he played the same team in 2 games in a row.
Right.
Because you win 6-2, your automatic one is, oh jeez, we were great. Well, now we can see 2 goals, but we were great. And the presser, everyone would go for it. But in this tournament, it's conditions. The gaps are short, not that short between the games. Yeah. The other things that managers are going to have to deal with is grumpy squads. It was bad enough when you're 23. Now you're at 26. You have a lot of fellas hanging about, not getting on the pitch. With the longer extra time, there'll be more opportunities, more subs. They're using 4 and 5 subs, but you still got to be careful of that. But he will have to change. And will he change and do something dramatic and put Foden on? I'm not sure about the one. What you said about Wayne Rooney, him needing Phillips. I always see Phillips and Rice in there and I always go, what does Phillips really give you? I don't see a great range of passing with him. Rice a better range of passing, and I think he's better at intercepting things, and his ability to run forward from the middle is better if he's playing with a partner. But I don't think they should go back to playing the 2 holders again. I think they've got so much talent in the attacking positions.
Yes.
They should stick with that.
Okay. On Brazil, by the way, what did we make of them?
Of the, let's say, favourite teams, I think they're a favourite team of many people. Many people would consider them the favourites for the tournament. Have they justified it? I think they've justified it more than Argentina have. Obviously, France, I would still, France have done enough to say Outside that, who'll be next? Belgium are struggling badly. England are the other one, 1-1 so far with England. But England got to the final of the Euros and did a 0-0 draw with Scotland in a similar situation to the 0-0 with USA. But Brazil, I think, been good. The Neymar one might not be a big problem for them. Weren't tested at the back against Serbia. Thiago, Marquinhos, very, very comfortable. Danilo, Alexandro, 2 full-backs in Juventus. Haven't been great at Juventus this year, but they weren't tested the other night. Mitrovic didn't look in great nick. Tadic, they didn't even play Vlahovic. They brought him on when it was too late. There'll be harder tests for Brazil, but very exciting in the front positions. I don't think they'll get away, excuse me, Joe, with that combination of Casemiro and Paqueta, the West Ham player, playing the middle of the field together. I think they'll need to, when they get against much stiffer opposition than Serbia provided, I think they'll need a Fred.
Yeah.
The Fred, not a Fred, not any old Fred, the Fred, the Manchester United Fred, or Fabinho in the middle of the pitch with Casemiro. If they're going to play the 4 attacking players, the outrageously attacking 4, I mean, there's none of them going to do an awful lot for you when you haven't got the ball. And if you go back to when the trio at PSG, why they haven't been successful with the 3 boys, with Neymar, Messi and Mbappe, it's because of that one, that they don't do enough and they haven't got the ball. That could become a problem for Brazil, but Richarlison didn't do much in the first half. You'd have been taking him off if you didn't know him at half time. He got 2 sensational, 2 great goals, and there's a lot of potential. Look at the bench and Anthony coming
insane.
On, and
Firmino watching at home,
and Martinelli not playing.
Apparently Fred was in there alongside Casemiro, but Richarlison of late has been so irresistible that TJ has said, oh, okay, well, let's just try and get away with one and you go on as well. But it'll be hard to see him stick with that across the tournament. Germany then against Spain this evening, so that's going to be interesting. We didn't touch on Spain. Did you see, and it's very hard to judge them off one game, did you see anything from Spain to make you think actually this group might be ready now as opposed to in 2 years' time or 4 years' time?
Well, I think the first thing is they've got a great manager, a tactically astute and courageous manager.
Why do you say courageous?
Because I see him leaving out players that the public and the Barcelona and Real Madrid fans would probably at times say should be playing the team over, not just for this competition but in general. He goes by his own opinion and sticks with it and is not prepared to upset people, and he's a very experienced manager. He comes across quite dour, I think, at times, but that's probably we don't get the full feeling for it because he's always speaking in Spanish nearly when we hear him.
But you saw what he's doing now for this World Cup, did you?
Go on.
Oh, he's doing he's got the headphones on and he's a microphone, and he's speaking directly to the fans, and they can send him questions, and he's answering them. He's holding court on sex the night before matches. He's doing all. Oh yeah, he's skipping the media, and he's doing the media, but then he's holding court directly to the fans actually. So I think he's trying to reach out a little bit. So look, they didn't have that in your day. No, but he's embracing all that.
Talking about those sorts of things anyway. Sure. But look. Brilliant, and the start, 7-0 against Costa Rica, sensational stuff. But I say courageous as well. He played Rodri centre half, and he's got Eric Garcia, who's played quite, and Pau Torres has been generally always in the team. Pau Torres of Villarreal. So he goes and said, well, I like Rodri. I know he's not playing there for Man City, but I'll play him centre half because we don't have loads of the ball, and his use of the ball and his ability to range of pass, and because Azpilicueta back in the team getting on. But the midfield thing, the Busquets, Pedri, Gavi, sensational. Gavi but we've seen this happening over the last few seasons in the Nations League a couple of years ago. Gavi just outstanding. I mean, what a player he is, and it's like. Have they reinvented that the great trio of Xavi, Iniesta and Busquets? Busquets is still going, and he's there and he's picking her up. The front three didn't start Morata, puts Asensio inside, so far someone on. They were very, very impressive, and they've got a good squad of players. Morata, scored a very good goal. He hasn't been he doesn't score frequently enough. He needs 2 or 3 chances to score a goal. That's what you'd say about him. We've still got a good goal scoring record. He's a handful. He gives them the option of changing it, but very impressive. And so we'll see how they go
tonight. Yeah, and look, I'm being told to wrap at 54. Do you see that clock?
Okay.
So that's tight. Now we'll give yourself a bit of wiggle room with a minute. What of Germany then? Because they'd be looking at missing the quarterfinals for the third successive tournament, which has never happened to Germany before. So Flick needs to try and sort something out here.
Yeah, I thought they played quite well in the match up until they lost the goal, and some of the combination play around the middle and Musiala was superb. The big moment of that was Gundogan's shot hit the post when they were totally dominant and making chances, and they've so many brilliant attacking players. They're struggling for the centre forward position. Havertz didn't play well, but I
you or die tonight.
Will they beat Spain tonight?
You or die.
Yeah.
Well, they got a good result earlier on.
4 points. They got a good result early on. The result worked out for them early on, so they're back in contention. They might get away with 4 points, but they get done tonight. I think they're gone. But they go out again the second time in a row. It was Korea in the last match in the group, in the last World Cup, and they got done when Neuer ended up halfway up the pitch on the left hand side, and Korea got the second goal when they were chasing the equaliser. So they could go out, but I think they're too good. But they're not too good. They're not too good. Spain could beat them, and it could be caught in the squad tonight. Germany go. But we see that Argentina have half rescued the situation and are back in. Yeah. They're in control of it themselves.
Yeah.
Germany, that would be a really interesting match tonight. Two great teams. Two teams of great players, let's say.
Yeah. 7 o'clock tonight. We are out of time. Thank you so much. That was great. Great
Thanks, Joe.
to get your thoughts on the first week. That was Brian Kerr with us. Our football coverage is with thanks to Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. Back shortly.
This weekend on News Talk, we're celebrating the return of winter in Dublin. And we have a weekend stay in Dublin, plus VIP tickets to the High Kings up for grabs.